Hello, I'm so happy you could join me today. My name is Pixie. I make videos about the art I make and the books I read. Today I read a book about art, synthesis. So I was kind of hoping that this book would do more for me than it did, but let me just tell you a little bit about the drawing before we get into the book review. I'm once again using more supplies from the Art Supply Advent Calendar from Pen Store, and this third theme I'm working with here was sketching. So I got graphite, charcoal, soft pastel pencils, a blending stick, and a kneaded eraser. They did also give me a pad of paper like they've done for every theme, but I'm using my sketchbook because I like that more. I glued some green paper into it because I was given a white pencil, and so I wanted to draw on toned paper and be able to use the white for highlights, because I always think that looks really cool. You will see later on. And also I want to give a big shout out to Eleanor for inspiring this drawing. I asked for suggestions on my Instagram stories, and my wonderful, sweet patron Eleanor suggested a frog on a lily pad, which sounded just really cute and fun, and a great match for the green paper, obviously. I don't use charcoal very often because it's so messy and dusty, but I do really like how black it can get and the soft blending you can do with it, and I just think it can be really expressive in a kind of unique way. And yeah, I had a lot of fun doing this sketch. Speaking of fun, let's discuss The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. So the book starts with Rubin disclaiming that nothing in this book is known to be true, and urging you to use what's helpful and let go of the rest. That is how I approach any kind of book like this, like the self-help kind, so I agree with the sentiment, but when I perused the reviews on Goodreads, I saw people responding to critical reviews with this quote as if it means you can't criticize it, because Rubin preempted that with this, and I don't think that's a very productive way to engage with books, and I am going to be critical. I did kind of enjoy the book, and I rated it 3 out of 5, initially 4, but I had to lower it. But I'll talk about later the stuff I did like to end on a more positive note. My main critique isn't so much about Rubin specifically as it is about a general tendency in this type of book about creativity, and it's the spirituality, the mysticism, the woo-woo, if you will. And I do engage with it by, as Rubin says, taking on board what makes sense to me and ignoring the woo-woo. But I do think it's worth having a conversation about, because it's so incredibly common, and I know I'm not the only atheist artist who gets tired of sifting through the mysticism to get to advice and insights that I can actually use. So this is not a beef with Rubin as an individual. It's a philosophical disagreement that I have with this entire trend. So we do need to start with a discussion on philosophy, but don't be scared, it's going to be fine, I promise. So the way I understand the world is through dialectical materialism. Materialism in this context means that I see the world as real and existing independently of my observation or any other human beings. I also believe that this world is governed by laws and patterns that we can understand, even if we don't currently understand every single thing. And even if some of these laws and patterns are very complex, they are understandable, even if they're complicated. And we do know a lot, and we learn more all of the time, which is really cool. The alternative to materialism is idealism, which in philosophy means that you see ideas as coming before reality, so you see reality as shaped by ideas, and the idea that language shapes reality is part of this, so that kind of thing. And materialism, by contrast, explains that reality is what shapes our ideas and determines what type of ideas are possible in a given society. There's a reason the ancient Greeks didn't invent the iPhone, and it's because there was no material basis for that kind of idea yet. So that's materialism. The dialectical part means that I understand this reality as constantly changing, Movement is how matter exists. It might not always be visible to the naked eye, but processes are always going on. Dialectics are also about the different ways these processes are expressed. For example, when a slow, gradual process leaps into a big change, we call that the transformation of quantity into quality, like when water slowly increases in temperature, and when it reaches the boiling point, there's a big transformation that happens when it turns into steam. Or when a price increase for public transport is the last straw for people after 30 years of slowly declining conditions, and they take to the streets in mass protests like in Chile in 2019. Dialectics are also the logic of contradictions. We can see that two things can be true at the same time that may appear to be mutually exclusive. We can see how opposites are in fact united in that they don't exist without the other, like the ruling class and the working class. It's overall an incredibly rich and rewarding way of understanding the world, because it is true and not just a story to help you feel better. And that brings us pretty well back to the creative act again. The book's undertitle is A Way of Being, and the first section tells us that everyone is an artist. And I can get behind that statement based on how the human species became what it is through creating new things using our hands and brains, and that helped develop our hands and brains. Based on the scientific knowledge we have, I'm inclined to say that humans, as a general rule, are creative beings. But what Rick Rubin means is that the, I quote, outside universe we perceive doesn't exist as such, end quote, and that what makes us artists is that we, quote, generate a world internally, end quote. So according to this philosophy, doing nothing is making art because we're generating a world internally. It's not a very satisfying definition, and it's not a very enjoyable creative act a lot of the time. I would say that art typically does one or both of these things. A, satisfies the creator in the moment of making, and or B, communicates something to another human being. So I think sitting on your couch and creating by perceiving the outside universe, which according to Rubin does not exist, doesn't achieve either of these things. Like, I mean, if you're skilled at meditation, you may get satisfaction from what I call sitting on the couch and doing nothing, but that's not what Rubin is talking about. He's saying, and I quote again, by simply existing, and which implies no effort on your behalf, right? And that's the comfortable lie of self-help literature, I feel. Like, we love to hear that what we want to do or be is easy to achieve, and the facts just suggest otherwise. I'm currently reading another book, Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience is its name, by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and it talks about the state of focus we can achieve when we do certain activities. I'm most interested in making art and reading, but there's also mountain climbing, playing chess. There's a lot of different activities that can help us reach this state. And so you're in flow when you don't notice the time is passing, because you're so absorbed in what you're doing. And this has been studied by this guy a lot. And there are different factors that go into being able to make it happen. And the factor I want to highlight here is that in order to achieve this satisfying state of being, the activity needs to be a challenge. It should be on a level that we are equipped to handle, like an appropriate level of challenge, but like enough to require concentration. So that's what makes creation satisfying. And it's also what keeps us moving forward and developing, because we need new challenges to continue being absorbed in our creativity. Now, to be fair to Rick Rubin, he does later in the book suggest trying different things in order to spark creativity, which to me implies this same principle. But that's also another criticism I have of this book. It does not present a coherent worldview. He also, at one point, talks about the physical world and refers to its rules as if it actually exists and is governed by laws. So what does he really believe? Who knows? It's actually a very unserious book that presents itself as extremely serious. Now I want to talk about Rubin's ideas about ideas. So he thinks that ideas come from outside us, from something very vague that he calls the capital S source. He calls artists translators for messages the universe is broadcasting. But it gets even better than that, because he goes on to say, I quote again, "To the mind, this material appears to come from within, but that's an illusion. There are tiny fragments of capital S source stored within us," end quote. So the source of ideas is within us, but it doesn't come from within at the same time. I'm gonna need you to be so serious right now. Like, come on, man. This line of thinking reminded me about when I tried to read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, another book about creativity. And I returned the book to the library when she said that ideas are a separate life form with their own consciousness, and that these ideas need a human collaborator to become reality. I mean, maybe, just maybe, hear me out, ideas need a human collaborator because ideas aren't a life form and are actually created by the human brain. That's just a thought to consider. Now, to be clear, I want and need to do more reading on ideas and creativity and the psychology of art in order to develop my knowledge and also my thoughts on it further. But I will say what I already know and what I think. Like, the human brain has an amazing capacity to process and filter and sort information. And we can influence how this is done to a certain extent by conscious intent. For example, if you walk into the supermarket looking for tomatoes, you may not even register the bananas as you pass by them because your brain is focused on tomatoes. So your brain prioritizes from all the available information in order to help you reach your goal. And what I think that this means is that when you look for creative ideas, you will find them. Like, you start practicing drawing, your brain learns to think in terms of drawing, and now you see drawing ideas in the world around you because it's become a priority for your brain. And I think that this is really amazing. Our brains are incredible. So these mystical notions about ideas as separate from humanity really grind my gears, because I think they underestimate the actual creativity of real human beings and how wonderful our actual real world is. I also feel that it does a disservice to artists to remove our agency from the equation. Sure, both Gilbert and Rubin do talk about how we have to open ourselves and attune to this cosmic bullshit, and how we need to show up and work to get these ideas. But at the end of the day, if ideas don't come from us, ultimately, we have less power over our art. And I think that's kind of cowardly. Like, no, I am responsible for the ideas I come up with, the bad and boring and shitty ones, included with the good ones. I can't blame the universe if I lack ideas either. It just means I'm not working. And for me, this understanding is much more empowering and inspiring than leaving it up to alien life forms to give me painting ideas. I also just find it so unnecessary to create this fiction in order to elevate art into something magically beautiful, because it already is. The magic is when we reach that state of flow I talked about, with our consciousness just completely focused on one single goal, in complete balance with itself, unaware of the passing of time. The magic is when you see, hear, or read an artwork and it touches something in you. It can reach across centuries, across oceans, across cultures, from one human to another. Because this dead material, whether it's paint, paper, stone, fabric, wood, whatever material, this dead material also contains living humanity that the artwork preserves and that touches the humanity in you. That is the magic of the human brain. We can just take in information and be transported to a feeling someone else felt 100 years ago. And the magic of the human hand, that through our crafts we can preserve a feeling, we can preserve a moment and transmit it into the future. How can that not be cool enough and beautiful enough and fantastic enough? Like, that is amazing. I love art. And I love loving art, so let's move on to what I liked about this book. Firstly, I have to shout out this book as a physical object. It is very nice. It has this cool circle design on the cover, and it's very tactile with like the cloth cover. It's really nice to touch. It's also a pretty thick book due to how much white space is on the pages. And it's got a bookmark string, and it just really feels really nice. So it's a pleasant object to have and to hold and interact with. It's very well designed. I also like how each chapter or like each line of thought is pretty short, and the style of writing is a lot of pretty short sentences, which makes it easy to read and gives the text a pleasant sort of cadence. You may be surprised to hear this, but there are also ideas in it that I do agree with. For example, the idea that we need to be serious and disciplined about our commitment to the work, but playful and free in how the work gets done, and sort of the connection between those. If we're disciplined about making time for art, we can spend our decision-making energy on how to work, not when to work. And I really like that, and that is something I want to be better at implementing. I also agree that failure gives us information that we need to move forward, and that we can only know if an idea works by testing it. I agree that we should work on the ideas that excite us the most. I agree that the art we make is intrinsically linked to the art we've made before and the art we will make after, and to the world we live in, our experiences, and our current selves. I agree that the attraction of art is the humanity held in it, like I said before. I agree that artists need patience, something I'm not always super good at, but I maybe make up for it with stubbornness. I don't know, I'm working on it. I also agree with the quote, "Do what you can with what you have, nothing more is needed." And I agree with the quote, "The challenge isn't that you can't do it, but that you haven't done it yet." Like, Rick Rubin obviously is a seasoned professional in a creative field, and with experience you tend to learn a useful thing or two. So these are some of the useful things that I will be taking on board from this book. Also, this is just a funny thing to me. Remember how we talked about dialectics earlier? How everything's in movement? The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus is thought to be the first dialectician, and one of his aphorisms was as follows: "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man." And another one is, "Everything flows." Now I want to read to you what Rick Rubin has quote-unquote written without mentioning Heraclitus or dialectics. Quote, "You can't step into the same stream twice because it's always flowing. Everything is." End quote. And I think it's really funny because in other places he quotes people to help him make his points, but here he's just like plagiarized Heraclitus and call it a day. Maybe he didn't know. I don't know. It's obviously possible that he's come to the same conclusion because he's observing the same world. I just thought it was really funny. It's dialectical idealism, which is very 200 years ago, but oh well. Despite all the criticism I have, I might still recommend reading it, depending on who's asking. But I will say that I personally had more benefit from 3 other books on art. 1, Art and Revolution by Leon Trotsky. 2, The Necessity of Art by Ernst Fischer. 3, The Creative Path by Caroline Schlam. The first 2 plays the artist's role in a societal and historical context and talks about what art can do for us and what it can't, and I found that super helpful and inspiring. The Creative Path has been helpful in my journey to figure out what my personal contribution can be, like on a more individual level. But I am looking for more books to read, especially about the creative process and our brains and how they work. So drop recommendations if you have them, because I want to learn more about this. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had fun. I hope you gained something from this. Extra thank you to my patrons for supporting my creative freedom. If you enjoyed this video, you may want to press like, the button with the thumbs up. Maybe subscribe, I don't know, just brainstorming, just throwing ideas out there. We'll see if they work. Either way, thank you for hanging out with me, and until next time, take good care of yourself. Alright, goodbye!